let's see. I call up some of there's a section on Islam in the modern world, which I guess we're slated for starting to talk about on Tuesday, but I thought we'd start in on it today. Somebody have a copy of their book that I could borrow for a minute? Thought we'd look at a few of these passages in from the Hadith. And particularly before we look at some of the modern goings on about this notion of forced conversion of unbelievers, and also the sort of bad blood between Muslims and Jews. So first of all, I'm going to just go through these hadith passages here. I gave you some passages overview of the Night of Power, which is the first time that Muhammad gets revelation from the angel Gabriel, gets the first verses of the Quran revealed to him. Some verses about the revelation of the Quran. Some versions of the 5 pillars. Here's an interesting question. So remember, it's on page 168. You think about Jesus was asked this question: What is the greatest commandment? Anybody remember what he says?
Love God and love your neighbor.
Yeah, love God with all your heart, all your mind, strength, and soul. And then he says the second like it is love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus says on these the whole law rests. Muhammad's asked a similar question. So this is on page 168. Allah's apostle was asked, what is the best deed? He replied, to believe in Allah and his apostle. Muhammad, right? The questioner then asks, what is next in goodness? And so remember, Jesus gives you like the next one is to love your neighbor as yourself. He replied, to participate in jihad. Now, jihad is an Arabic word that means struggle, and it refers specifically to religious fighting, and it refers to armed struggle, fighting in a holy war against the unbelievers. So he says to participate in jihad in Allah's cause. Then the questioner asks, what's next? And he says, well, it's the Hajj, pilgrimage to Mecca. And then, I guess he stopped then. So, whereas Jesus says that after, the first ones are similar, right? Love God with all your heart. And Muhammad says, believe in Allah and his apostle. But the next one is to fight in a war, to conquer the unbelievers and force them to accept your religion in Islam, as opposed to love your neighbor as yourself. And so, while it's true that the vast majority of Muslims are peaceable and believe in freedom of religion, if you look at the primary foundational text of the religion, they say otherwise, encourage people otherwise. So this is why when you get, say, a fundamentalist Christian, he's going to behave in different ways than a fundamentalist, Muslim, or you could say extremist or radical, right? So a fundamentalist Christian might, protest out in front of a movie theater peaceably. Or you think about the sorts of things that Jesus says. They might sell all their possessions and become a street preacher or something. Whereas as you become a radical fundamentalist Muslim, you want to fight in the jihad against the unbelievers and try to institute a caliphate, which is something that I said was coming down the pike for since I've been teaching this class and was expecting it, and now it's finally here. I'm sorry to say that was right. But it comes from, you look at like the Crusades, right? the popes preached messages telling people to go take the Holy Land. Now they had some precedent in the Old Testament, right, where the God's chosen people, the Jews, were told to go in and take the land of Canaan, wipe out all the people there, and take it for themselves. And when the popes preached the Crusades, they couldn't point to any New Testament text where Jesus says, go in and conquer all these people and take their land, right? That he had to look at the Old Testament. Because Jesus says, Jesus is basically a pacifist, and Jesus is apolitical. Whereas Muhammad is a desert warrior, he's a chieftain, he's the head of a church-state empire, and his example is one of a conqueror and a person who engages in these forced conversions and fights against the unbelievers until they accept submission to Allah, until they become Muslims, or they're Jews and Christians who accept second-class citizen status under Muslim rule. Let's see. There's a version of the Golden Rule. So again, I try to put in some positive things here. But there are lots of passages in the Quran and Hadith about the jihad. So here we see Muhammad saying, I've been ordered by Allah to fight against the people until they testify that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and that Muhammad is Allah's apostle, and offer up prayers perfectly and give the obligatory charity, that's the zakat. So that they perform that, they save their lives and their property from me, except for Islamic laws, and their reckoning will be done by Allah. So they're going to be judged by God. So what's he going to do? He's going to conquer them. He's going to force them to pay this zakat, this religious tax. And they have to testify that there is no God but God. So basically they have to become Muslims. Or, again, Jews and Christians can have to accept Muslim rule. Here's one at the bottom of the page that says, the person who participates in holy battles in Allah's cause, it's participating in the jihad. And nothing compels them to do so except belief in Allah and His apostles will be recompensed by Allah, either with a reward or booty, this is the spoils of war, right, if he survives, or will be admitted to paradise if he's killed in battle as a martyr. Had I not found it difficult for my followers, then I would not have remained behind. I'm not sure, this is an Arabic word I'm not familiar with. This is a guy who, let's see. Take up in the middle here. I would love to have been martyred in Allah's cause and then made alive, and then martyred and then made alive, and then again martyred in His cause. So this is Muhammad speaking, talking about how great it would be to die in the jihad and then be resurrected and to be able to fight some more and then to be killed in battle as a martyr. And so this idea of dying as a martyr is also a tradition in the religion, and it's seen as the height of spirituality to die fighting in Allah's cause. Not Allah's cause, in Allah's cause. Right? Let's see. There's another one here. So there's Muhammad says the example of the mujahid, who is a fighter in Allah's cause. So you have this group in Afghanistan, the mujahideen. It's a similar word, and it's the people who are the holy fighters in Allah's cause. Allah knows better who really strives in His cause. Is a person who fasts and prays continuously. Allah guarantees He will admit the mujahid in his cause into paradise if he is killed. Otherwise, He will return him to his home safely with the rewards of war and booty. So basically, if you go out and fight in the jihad, you're going to get rewarded either way. you'll either die in battle, in which case you'll be admitted to paradise and Allah will reward you there, or you'll get the spoils of war. You'll get, basically steal the stuff the people you're fighting, and you get to take it home. Think about it as being like a giant, it's sort of, I don't know, like, pillaging is typical in warfare. So you, like, after you conquer the guy, you, like, plunder his house, right? Take all his stuff. It's sort of like the Rodney King riots, right? You just take anything that's not nailed down after you conquer the other guy. And so Muhammad would encourage his followers to take plunder as a reward for fighting Allah's cause. The guys that got killed, their reward is in heaven. So here's Muhammad had a visionary dream. He said, last night two men came to me in a dream and made me ascend a tree and then admitted me into a better and superior house, better than which I had never seen. And one of them said, this is the house of the martyrs. Right? So Jesus says, in my Father's house are many rooms, and I go to prepare a place for you. And and Muhammad says a similar thing, but he says, I saw this vision in a dream where, and this is the idea, it's kind of a prophetic dream, where I was shown this giant house, and it's like the most amazing house I ever saw. And the guy said, well, this is the house of the martyrs. This is where you're going to get to go if you die as a martyr in battle, fighting in Allah's cause in the jihad. Let's see. Oh, apostasy. So one of the problems in that you have in Islam is that once it's like the Hotel California. You can check out at any time, but you can never leave. There's no leaving Islam. So apostasy means falling away. That means when you leave a religion. So like if you're a member of like the Mormon church or the Catholic church or whatever, and you stop going and you're like, no, I'm an atheist now, or I'm going to pick another religion, I'm going to convert to Buddhism. And people in America see that's just par for the course. Well, in Islam, going back to the teachings of Muhammad, apostasy is not allowed. So once you convert to Islam, once you say the Shahada, there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger, then you're in. And there's no leaving. So,
Can you be exiled?
well, you can run away, I suppose, but you can't leave. So you can't quit the
They
religion.
won't kick you out for anything.
Well, so under Sharia law, the penalty is death.
Oh, okay.
So here's an example from the Hadith. Once Muad paid a visit to Abu Musa and saw a chained man, and Muad asked, "What is this?" Abu Musa said, "He was a Jew who embraced Islam and has now turned apostate." And Muad said, "I will surely chop off his neck." And there's just several versions of this. Again, a Jew who'd converted to Islam and now he's gone back to Judaism, and the guy is executed. And again, this is from Muhammad himself. The blood of a Muslim who confesses that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and I am his apostle, cannot be shed except for in 3 cases. So if you're a Muslim, you can't be killed except for under 3 cases. So the first one is murder. The second one is adultery, or illegal sexual intercourse might include some other things. And the third one is one who reverts from Islam and leaves the Muslims. Right? So it's basically murder, adultery, and leaving the religion give you the death penalty. So there was a problem in Afghanistan after the Afghanistan war. You had the Karzai government set up under George W. Bush, and they were giving they're trying to give them self-rule, like pull the troops out, install a secular government. And there was a problem. There was a person there who had converted to Christianity, and he was in prison, and he was going to be executed. And so the Bush administration got hold of the Karzai government and said, look, we still have a bunch of troops there, and this is making us look really, really bad because President Bush's base is evangelical Christians. And here in America, we think that you can pick whatever religion you like or no religion, and that's A-okay. And you can't just go around killing Christians for leaving Islam. And the guy got clemency, and they ended up coming to the U.S. But here that you have this new government that's set up by the Bush administration and set up to be something different than the Taliban, right? But the thing is, it's not just the Taliban that follow these very strict, stringent Islamic laws. It's lots of people that believe in them, and even the Karzai government, which is the government set up by the U.S. They're going to kill this guy for leaving Islam. Another problem is when you're born. What does it mean to be a Muslim? Sometimes it means your family is Muslim. So if you're born Muslim and your parents are Muslim, the idea is that you're a Muslim. And so you're sort of grandfathered into the religion. So leaving Islam just might mean that you're raised Muslim and you decide you want to be a Christian, and that's just not allowed. Now there are some secular countries or nominally secular countries like Turkey, or maybe places like Indonesia where that's not, it's considered to be archaic and barbaric, and where there's this idea you can pick your religion. But in many places, particularly where fundamentalists rule, you can't leave the religion. Let's see. Oh, 5 minutes. I have some the stuff on women. And again, I tell you stuff, and you're like, really? Does it really say that? Well, here's from the Hadith, and you can look this stuff up online. Volume 8, book 76, number 256. So there's a lot of Hadith on page 170. The Prophet said, I looked into paradise, and I found the majority of its dwellers were poor people. So similar to Jesus, right? And I looked into hell and found the majority of its dwellers were women. It actually says, I looked into the fire, the hellfire, and the majority of people there are women. Let's see. Oh, dogs. Here's a thing about modern Muslim practice. This is on page maybe talk about alcohol first. The cause of and solution to all life's problems. Page 172. So this is from Isha. Allah's apostle was asked about a liquor prepared with honey, which the Yemenites used to drink. So it's people from the country of Yemen. And Muhammad says, all drinks that intoxicate are unlawful to drink. So in Islam, alcohol is absolutely prohibited. So when in Ramadan, when it's talking about, when Muslims talk about no eating or drinking during the day, it's just talking about water. You can't drink water. Drinking alcohol is always prohibited. Whoever drinks alcoholic drinks in the world and does not repent is deprived of it in the hereafter. So actually, in the afterlife, you can drink all the alcohol you want, but here on earth, it's forbidden.
Well, during the month of fasting, what did they drink then?
Just like water.
Water diet.
I guess you can drink juice, but you can't drink anything that's fermented or intoxicating.
Well, it said on the slideshow during fasting, no eating or drinking.
Right,
Just during daylight.
Just during daylight.
right,
Oh, okay.
right, yeah. If you go without water for a month, you'll die. Here's an interesting thing about dogs. So, you know, dogs are in Islam are considered to be an unclean animal. And so here's, again, there's traditions in the Quran. As one that says, I heard the Prophet saying, if someone keeps a dog neither for hunting nor guarding livestock, the reward for his good deeds will be reduced by 2 karats per day. So basically, you get a fine for keeping a dog as a pet. And he also says, angels don't enter a house where there's a dog or a picture of a living creature. This is the idea of him being against images. And in one case, he had all the dogs in an entire city killed because of this kind of, you might say, superstitious belief that the dogs scare the angels away, that they're an unclean animal, and that and so there's this tradition in Islam, not always followed, but people in Islamic countries generally don't keep dogs as pets for this reason. I'll close with a little story of a friend of mine that worked with an international program, and they're trying to teach these Muslim students about American traditions. They went out to a park and threw a frisbee around, and one of them had a dog around, and they were throwing the frisbee to the dog, and the dog was catching the frisbee in its mouth, and it come over and run over to a person and have it thrown again. And they tried to hand it to one of these Muslim students, and he looked down at the frisbee and kind of like backed up, and they tried to hand it to him. Try it, go ahead and throw it. And he's like, I do not want to touch it. And they're like, oh, what's wrong? And he says, the dog's an unclean animal, and that was his belief about dogs, and it's seen as you know, unclean. So different customs in the Arab world, from not eating with your left hand to not keeping dogs as pets, not drinking alcohol, all come straight from the Hadith, and sometimes more of the Hadith from the Quran. So we'll finish up Islam Tuesday and Thursday of next week. No class Thursday. Happy Thanksgiving.